friends, Jacob Mad Crazy Reviews. On the road again, as you can see. Actually, not technically on the road, just outside my daughter's gymnastics class. I had recorded a version of this, but wasn't too happy with it, so I'm going to try and redo it. I really hope the music isn't super distracting, but here we go. Anyway, this is going to be a new segment I'm calling the Director Spotlight. So this is going to be highlighting filmmakers who've been important to me in my development of film appreciation or just my own experience and interaction with film as a medium over the years. And we're going to start out with a heavyweight in a lot of different ways. Orson Welles, the man himself. So, we'll get to the movies in a minute, but I just want to start off by saying that I think one of the trickiest things, there have been books and documentaries, tons and tons of resources over the years about Orson Welles, his career in radio, in film, on the stage, just as an artist in general. But the imprint he left on film and film history, film technique, is immeasurable. It truly is immeasurable. There's no one else quite like him. And I take quite a bit of inspiration just in the fact that this is a man who was really determined to do things his way, sometimes to his detriment. I think you can see kind of a running theme there, both in the work that he created and the things he was not able to create. But he's one of the most important figures in film history and a really inspiring figure to myself as far as the way I look at movies. So when I was in film school, gosh, almost 20 years ago now, when it came to do my final thesis film, I really wanted to do it as a oneer, so to speak. I wanted to do the whole thing one take. I wanted to have the camera go in a complete circle, doing all these different things. And I realized after a certain point I would have to give up something because we were truly working with film and lights, all the whole thing, and you come up to a practical restraint, especially when you're a student and you're working with non-professionals. So we did our best. We still did some cool stuff. I did a 360 shot, and we did another shot in a room of mirrors and different things. So I think it still turned out well, but didn't have that wonder. But anyway, one of the things that inspired me was Orson Welles. He had a lot of fairly famous quotes. He had a lot of strong opinions. But one of the things that he said was that a long playing full shot, so a long continuous take featuring actors in full, separates the men from the boys. And I always found that to be a really interesting perspective and an inspiring one as well. And it's true. You look at movies even today, a lot of the most impressive things are the shots that play out in one take, or at least they trick you into thinking is one take. These days there's a lot of digital manipulation and there's a lot of kind of fakery to make it look seamless, and usually they're combining several different takes. But at the time when you're working with film and practical limitations, that was kind of the benchmark of technique and innovation. And those two things in particular, I think, are where Welles really made his mark. He famously, his biggest movie was Citizen Kane. Not in terms of financial success, but as far as artistic imprint, it's a towering film in film history. It's often the benchmark that great movies are measured against. You've probably heard at some point saying, well, this movie is no Citizen Kane, but it's fun. Or it's no Citizen Kane, but it's still a good movie. Even now, over 80 years later, this is still kind of our pop culture benchmark for film greatness. And, it's great. It's a fantastic movie. It announced the arrival of a one-of-a-kind artist. So I'm not going to go into the movies that he didn't complete or that, kind of are lost to history. So this is just the ones that he was able to complete and release in his lifetime. You know, I know that Netflix has The Other Side of the Wind, which was kind of finished after his death. I feel like that's, for our purposes, that's kind of cheating in a way. So again, these are the films that he was able to complete while he was still alive. 1941, Citizen Kane. 1942, The Magnificent Ambersons. 1946, The Stranger. 1947, The Lady from Shanghai. 1948, Macbeth. 1951, Othello. 1955, Mr. Arcada. 1958, The Touch of Evil. 1962, The Trial. 1966, Chime at Midnight. 1973, F for Fake. So that's just over 30 years writing and directing movies, most of them adaptations of some sort. But even then, you could tell an Orson Welles movie when you were watching an Orson Welles movie. And he had a very unique style, and that honestly is what affected me the most. Like, just the way he kind of would frame things, the way he would look at things. You have a lot of kind of low angles looking up. You have just really kind of stark contrast. He was known for, again, these long-running takes where the camera's just gliding in and out of rooms, sometimes flying above things. Just incredible. And thematically, often dealing with larger-than-life characters who are kind of undone by their own pride, by their own hubris. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of the story of Orson Welles himself. He was famously very difficult to work with. He had a big ego. And the thing that you have to keep in mind as you're watching an Orson Welles movie is there's very often, except for Kane, there's the movie he wanted to make, and then there's the movie you're watching. The most famous example is The Magnificent Ambersons, which was, you know, he had control, he had a very clear vision for how he wanted that story to end, and the studio didn't like the way it ended, so they literally took the film away from him, shot a new ending, and burned the rest of the film so that there was only one version that would exist, and that was the studio version. So those sorts of stories plague his career constantly. You know, he either couldn't get the funding to finish a movie, or he would have these artistic differences and would just kind of not finish it out of spite or refuse to do work. So not an easy man to work with, and again, bringing it back thematically, often undone by his own pride, by his own hubris. It seems kind of, by the time you get to F for Fake, he'd kind of come to terms with the way his career went and with his faults. Or at the very least, he's kind of putting on a show that he understands, that he kind of did this to himself. So I wouldn't say that F for Fake is like an apology to the film industry, but it does show him kind of in a softer light, where he's a little bit more, just a little bit more humble and a little bit more kind of grateful to the life he was able to live. I mean, not many people can go out and do all these big artistic endeavors on someone else's dime, on their own terms. That's not very common. So the fact that he was able to, I mean, even with a lot of the movies being not quite the way he wanted them, a lot of them being re-edited or portions reshot without his permission, this is still quite an impressive career. Like, there's Citizen Kane, Magnificent Ambersons, up until the ending, is just as good as Citizen Kane, and in some ways even better. The Lady from Shanghai, incredible movie that has been parodied and copied so many times with thrillers throughout Hollywood history. It's incredible. Like, you probably could not count all of the times that movie has been parodied and copied, especially the ending. Macbeth, Othello, Chimes at Midnight, the Shakespeare adaptations are some of the most unique Shakespeare adaptations you'll ever see. And then back to kind of the thriller noir material, Touch of Evil is amazing. I mean, that opening shot. So again, the long plane full shot, right? He opens the movie on the close-up of a bottle. It's set to 3 or 4 minutes. I think it's set to 4 minutes. And then it's put in a car, and then you see the rest of the 4 minutes play out on screen. So you're following that car, and the whole time your heart is like racing, like, oh my God, this thing's going to go off at any moment. What's going to happen? What's the fallout? Who's going to get killed? And then the trial, which I think is just as good as any of them. Personal favorite of mine. It's fantastic. Like the cinematography to that movie, the way he was able to bring his own particular interests and then tie it into what Kafka was trying to do with the original story. It's just seamless. It's perfect. It's fantastic. So a lot of great movies, even with the challenging career that he had. So he was one of a kind. So I have a lot of admiration, I draw a lot of inspiration from him. And like I said, this is a big one to start with. I know that the things I'm saying pale in comparison to what other smarter film scholars have said, but this is something I wanted to play around with. We'll be talking about a lot more kind of, maybe not necessarily like lesser known, we'll be hitting some popular people, some less popular people. Basically, the idea is to just highlight people that I find interesting to follow the film career and to discuss their film output. And so, I hope you would be willing to join the journey with me. So again, I'm Jacob. This is Mad Crazy Reviews. If you're interested, I'm on Instagram, Substack, YouTube, and keep coming back. We'll do more of these. I'm hoping to do one of these each month for the foreseeable future. And there's a lot of other stuff. We've got the original content with the book reviews and written reviews, a lot of different things. So I hope you come back. And again, Mad Crazy Reviews. Please share, like, subscribe, do all the things.